Honorable Chief Justice of Nepal, former Prime Minister Baburam Bhattaraiji, Kailash Siroiya ji, Pratap Bhanu Mehta ji, Yogendra Bhai, Dilli Chaudhary ji, Reena ji, and dozens of my friends and family, brothers, sisters, young friends. I am very delighted and blessed. Blessed because I am standing here in the land of Pashupatinath and Lord Buddha. And I am delighted to be amongst specialists, experts, thought leaders, scholars, industrialists, university students, politicians, and so on. I recall many incidents, but my very tiny contribution in the struggle for the democracy of Nepal. I was the part of at least 2 or 3 organizations, the Nepalese or Indo-Nepalese groups which were fighting to bring democracy in Nepal in mid-80s, early 80s. So a few times I participated in the demonstrations and other activities. So once we were demonstrating, having a protest in front of Nepalese embassy in India. I think it was in 82 or 83. And the police started cane charge. And I was the one who was hit in my back and pushed into a police jeep along with several friends of mine and several protesters. It was near the Mandi House area that time, the Nepalese embassy. So we had to sit for the whole day, and we were not informed by the police what action they are going to take, whether they are going to send us in prison or they are going to, what they will do. So we had to sit without food and water 7-8 hours. And finally, they just left us. They allowed us to go. But I have been coming to Nepal dozens and dozens of times, as mentioned in the introduction. So I always say Nepal is like my second home. And I have promised to my friend and like my son, Dilli Chaudhary, who was the union minister here, and recently he was chief minister of Lumbini, that Nepal would be the first country after my hometown in Madhya Pradesh to celebrate the Nobel award that I did. And I came here for the first time, and I could not believe that dozens of thousands of people were on the streets in Dang, also in Nepalganj and several places. And many of them were the children whom we rescued in the past and their parents and family members. So it is my second home. It has been said yesterday and today that this is a very pertinent topic, democracy in dilemma. And as Honorable Chief Justice has mentioned at least 2-3 times, that this is the time to act. We have to translate our ideas, our thoughts, our knowledge, our wisdom, our experience, our talks about this issue, understanding about this issue into action. We cannot remain passive observers. Needless to say that democracy is not just a political system or a system of governance. It is also an embodiment of certain values that hold society together and keep it fairer. With a sense of responsibility, with a sense of accountability, democracy teaches us how to hold the society together and fairer. And these principles are known to all of us or most of us. Freedom of expression and association, respect and ears to listen to dissent, views and opinions, equality before the law, equal opportunities to grow, to fulfill dreams, regardless of any color, caste, creed, or any other background. And so many other things are there. But when these principles are threatened, then naturally the dilemma begins. Dilemma in democracy. Democracy weakens. So I would not be speaking on those deeper topics which are going to be discussed and delivered in coming 2 days. And the experts are sitting here. But I would briefly bring some issues. I think there are 4 areas of this dilemma in democracy. The first one is erosion of trust in governance. And the trust of the people, of the citizens, is eroded due to several factors. Corruption, lack of transparency, lack of accountability, advancing majoritarianism, polarization, and so many other factors. But when the pillars of democracy, including judiciary and media, they are jeopardized, they are compromised, or instead of protecting justice and democracy and truth, if they start serving the political interest in different points of time, then the public trust eroded in democracy. So it is not only in the democratic governance, democratic institutions or governance institutions, but people started devaluating or questioning that why democracy is needed if all things happen as a result of democracy. I can give you an example that I am the part of many of these high-level conversations, dialogue and discussions in the UN reform. There are some groups and committees, official and unofficial, in UN reforms. And where I experience that the erosion of power and trust of United Nations and its institutions today, the weakening of the global governance is resulting in many ways. And one thing is that some very important people started thinking that this UN system is obsolete, but also the idea behind the formation of United Nations and its institutions is also being questioned. These ideas are fundamentals. The principles of democracies are universal and core for the survival of society. So is the United Nations, the principles, the basis of the United Nations. But when they lose their power and authority and trust, then the people become more and more delusioned about those ideas, not just about the institutions. So the first was the erosion of trust. The second is the manipulation of truth. Media is very important in that. And I am very proud and pleased to see that Kantipur Times as well as all the larger family of Kailashji has taken up this challenge and boldly bringing this issue for discussion, because this is also a self-reflection for media, democracy and politics, all the democratic institutions of governance. So, social media is also, which was mentioned briefly. If social media is controlled, manipulated, misused, abused by some power groups, power of resources, power of state agencies globally, then people are confused. Because every day there is a flood, every minute actually is a flood of false information, which eventually results in divide in society and humanity. Which results in hate, creating hate, revengeful attitude. And we all know and we all say that the world has never been so broken and so divided. At least in the last 70, 80 years, we have seen as it is today. Despite all resources to keep it intact, it is getting more and more divided. And that is also because of the manipulation of truth through the social media, through some of the leaders in some parts of the world, and ordinary citizens and people are the part of it. The third area, I would say the third element in delusion or dilemma is delusion or weakening the values of democracy. In our personal life, in our organizational life, in our institutional and social life, and more in the political life with the political parties, the values of democracy, where the power, credit, decision-making is decentralized, shared. If this is weakening, then slowly the values are diluting. And because of several reasons, we started preferring to be more autocratic of our own decision-making. May it be our institutions, the smaller institutions and organizations, may it be the political parties, may it be the national governments. And that goes across. And the fourth factor for this dilemma, which for me is very, very important, and more important because all my life I've been working and struggling on it, is the failure of state or state agencies in ensuring social justice. Social justice is the key. If the people don't see their future in society, if they are not confident that they are going to get the fair share of what they are contributing to the society, if they are not certain about their own future as well as certain about the equal opportunities in society, in economy, in politics, then they lose faith in the democracy. It is the responsibility of state to ensure social justice. But it is equally important that the faith institutions, the social institutions, cultural institutions, civil society organizations must foster the idea and demand for social justice. And that has to be ascertained to protect democracy and to get rid of this dilemma. Decent work conditions, where the freedom, safety, equity, and dignity is ascertained in work. Unfortunately, 40% of the workforce in the world is not given social protection as well as the guarantee of social justice. Today, when I stand here, I would like to bring a very serious issue that 2.1 million, 21 lakh Nepalese today are living outside Nepal. This is 7.4% population of Nepal. I was reading somewhere that 1,700 people leave Nepal every single day. Nepalese leave Nepal every single day. And this is a serious challenge. It cannot be met just by the government, any government. They cannot solve this problem within a day or so. It is also a collective responsibility to accept it as a national challenge. And that begins with mindset. That begins with creating confidence in this country, in this land, and the potential of this land. And that is the collective work which has to be done by the media, by the society, by the institutions which are governmental or non-governmental, to build that confidence that if they stay here in this land, of course there would be problems. It is not so easy to live. Sometimes you feel that it is easier to go to Australia. Australia is the country which has quite a large number of Nepalese workers. But I came across many Nepalis in Europe, in Australia, in Middle East, in America, how they live. Many of them have no legal documents, and they keep on struggling for half of their life and keeping themselves hidden here and there. But their living conditions are so pathetic and sometimes inhuman, which if you go and see them, 8, 10 people living in a small room. Some Nepalis, maybe some Indians, some Pakistanis, Bangladeshis. So a lot of work has to be done. And it is also the responsibility of the state to do every single thing. Spend a lot of resources, time, energy, efforts to give this dream that Nepal has all the potential and possibilities for the future, and if they stay here, they can not only make their life better, but also they will make this country a better living place, more prosperous, more peaceful. And if educated people stay here, and half of them are educated people, many of them are going for education. But a lot of investment is also needed to ensure education, good quality education in the country itself. I'm also aware that 1 out of 6 children are working as child laborers in Nepal. But this is not uncommon in many of the developing countries. 1 out of 10 children in the world are living in child labor, child slavery, child trafficking, etc. When we talk of democracy, how can we think of ensuring the better future, a bright future, a guaranteed future, where the young people can fulfill their dreams, especially the children? 250 million children in the world are out of school today. They have to be in primary and secondary schools. 160 million children are trapped into child labor, slavery, and trafficking. 160 million. Dear sisters and brothers, this is not a number. They are someone's children. They have somewhere their mother who has given birth to them and had concern for them, worries for them. They have fathers, siblings, relatives. But they are sold and bought sometimes in lesser price than the animals. I would recall an incident. Dilli Bhai was there when we organized a long march. I have organized several long marches across Nepal and, of course, across the world, at least one. But when we were organizing a march against child trafficking, we were staying at some place near Lumbini, I think in Lumbini, in a smaller place. And in the night I saw at the corner 8, 10 young people, 12, 13, 14-year-old children, girls and boys were sitting in a corner. They were from South Asia. That was the South Asian March. So Indian, Pakistani, Nepali, Bangladeshi. Language was not the big barrier, so they can communicate. They could communicate. And from the back, I was listening that conversation. One of them asked to other child, I was working at a brick kiln and I was sold then somebody has bought me for 2,000 rupees. Then a girl stood up and said, "Oh, just 2,000. I was more costlier. I was bought for 5,000 rupees. Then another boy from another country, boy and girl both said, "Yeah, that is not very much. Some of us are bought for 6,000-7,000 rupees. Then suddenly a girl stood up and said, "Because I was bought and sold 2 times, once for a domestic help, again for a brothel, prostitution, and I was sold for 15,000 rupees. And then a boy said, in tears, he said that, "May I ask you how much a buffalo cost for? What is the price of a buffalo in your country, in your time?" She said, "Maybe 70,000-80,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees. Everybody looked at each other. They were all in tears. They left the place. They had no courage to talk to each other. And I had no courage to look into them and stop for a while and talk to them. They were crossing me. I was standing like a stone in tears. Is it the world we are going to give to our children? Is it the democracy? Is it the development? Is it the United Nations? Is it our government which is going to give this kind of future and this kind of present, where the children are sold and bought like animals and sometimes in lesser price than the buffalo and cattle? Social justice. We cannot ensure the success of democracy without ensuring social justice, where every single child has to be protected. Once I was sitting in a remote village in a Western African country, Ivory Coast. And I was sitting with a group of children, and all of them were having injuries, bruises, scars on their bodies, because they were all working in cocoa farms. And you know, cocoa is the core ingredient of chocolate. Language was the problem though, but I sat with them because I have been working in that country for many years. So I sat with this group of children and asked one of the girls, 14-year-old or so, that, "My daughter, how do you like chocolate?" She said, "What is chocolate?" She asked to the neighboring boy, "What is chocolate?" All the children who were producing cocoa at the cost of their education, freedom, childhood, health, and chocolates which are liked by young people everywhere in the world, and the big companies making billions of dollars out of it, not millions. These boys and girls said, "No, we have no idea what chocolate is." I was trying to explain. Even then, they could not understand. The girl in return told me that, "Sir, sorry, we have not heard, we have not seen this kind of thing in our life." Is it this world we are going to give to our children? 160 million child laborers means 160 million empty seats in the classrooms. This also means 160 million jobs snatched away from adults and imposed on children because children are the cheapest or free source of labor. This is a vicious circle that eventually demolished the very idea of justice and freedom and equity and eventually social justice and democracy. World is not so poor. I have actually initiated a group of 80 or plus Nobel laureates from all disciplines called Laureates and Leaders for Children. And some years ago, 3-4 years ago, we came out with a study and released on behalf of Laureates and Leaders. And we found that only $53 billion additional dollars annually can ensure protection, education, and health care of every single child in all low-income countries. $53 billion. And what is this money? This is less than 10 days of global military expenditure. So world is not very poor. Just this amount of money. So friends, we know the problems. And we also have experience of what works. We have an idea about the solutions of the problems. But while summarizing, I would underline here that the problem or the issue lies in one major thing. And that is not only the disconnect, but the gap between the problem solvers and the problem sufferers is widening and deepening. Those who are legally and morally responsible for solving the problems of problem sufferers, they have lost that track, and the problem sufferers are lost. How we can revive the values of democracy and the democratic functions if this gap is growing and broadening? You can call it lack of accountability, you can call it lack of connectivity, you can call the lack of dialogue and discussion and debates and so on, but the gap is simple. But the third element, and that is the ordinary people, they are becoming more and more problem spectators. Why we should get into it? Oh God, leave it. This is their job. This is a government job to do, or this is the doctor's job to treat the patient. Doctor is the problem solver. But what is the relationship between the doctor and the patients? It's a commercial, transactional relationship or not? It is. Judiciary and the people, the law enforcement agencies and the citizens, teachers and the students, corporate and the consumer. There are a lot of layers in between, a lot of supply chain issues are in between. But problem sufferers are increasing and becoming more and more hopeless. This is one reality. But another reality is that there are organizations in civil society, there are political leaders in the governance in the world. I'm not going to name them. There are youth organizations, students organizations, farmers organizations, workers organizations, media groups, and there are leaders in the corporate world who understand this and they wanted to fill that gap, and they are working towards democracy, they are working towards humanity. This is compassion, which I have just spoken. Compassion is not empathy, it is not mercy, it is not kindness. Unfortunately, all of them were put in one basket, and this is not true. None of these great human traits, human characteristics, except compassion, have the power to transform the world, especially correct those wrongs which are stamped or rooted in the structural, institutional, and systemic causes. These issues like racial discrimination, the caste discrimination, like ongoing communal divide, all these things are so deep-rooted that only the kindness cannot solve the problem. So it needs the power, transformative power of compassion. Because for me, in simple words, selfless and mindful problem solving is compassion. Compassion is selfless and mindful problem solving. I don't want to go into the spiritual or religious part of it. It's very much biological. It's very much neurological. It is innate in each one of us, and we have to reinvigorate the power of compassion in solving each other's problems, and especially holding the agencies responsible and accountable, and that can be done. And that is being done in a smaller way, scattered way here and there. We can learn the lessons from all those things. So even if the democracy is in dilemma, but we have witnessed in the history that such things, such dark times come, or such confusing and dilemma times come, and eventually they go, because nothing is more powerful, nothing is more transformative than the inherent, the innate power in human beings. The conscience of humanity, inside humanity, will definitely put an end to these situations, but we cannot sit quiet, we cannot sit observers. I would end with an anecdote related to Pashupatinath, Lord Shiva. One day, Lord Shiva was walking somewhere here in Himalayas along with his spouse, Parvati. Parvati noticed that there was an elephant passing through in the jungle. But what she noticed was that there were innumerable, thousands of small ants were there on the street. And when elephant put his step, hundreds, thousands of those ants, innocent ants, were killed, crushed. So out of deep concern, she shouted, "Lord, look at these ants. They are innocent and they are being crushed by this elephant. So you have to stop and punish this elephant." Pashupatinath did not stop. He kept on walking. He did not even smile. Parvati was running, more or less. And she shouted more loudly, "What are you doing? I told you to stop this elephant. And if you cannot stop or punish him, you should punish this Mahavat. The Mahavat is responsible for killing it." Lord said that no, the elephant cannot see. Look at his eyes. He cannot see on the earth, land. So he is being taken by this Mahavat. So she said, you have to punish and stop this Mahabharat to save the life of these ants. Then he said, no, I am not going to punish him or stop him. He is going for some work and that he has to complete his job. So finally she cried that if you are not going to punish them, just take your Trishul and take the lives of all those ants so they can go in Shivdham, in heaven. Then Shiva stopped and said, Parvati, none of these are responsible. They are not sinners. You are responsible because you were the first who has noticed that this wrong is happening, this injustice is happening, this catastrophe is happening. Why didn't you stop immediately? Why didn't you stand there in between and you could have said to Mahabharat and to elephant that no, all those ants could have been saved. But you preferred that somebody will come, the Lord Shiva, the Pashupatinath will come and save our life. If we think that some leaders will take birth on the earth and they are going to save democracies, they are going to save humanity, they are going to save the world, then it is already too late. Pashupatinath said, take action now. Don't be silent spectators, silent observers, passive observers. Those who are passive observers, they are guilty. Parvati, you are guilty. So today's and tomorrow's and day after tomorrow's message should be that we cannot remain passive observers. We have to speak out, we have to write down, we have to do whatever we can do for education, for awareness, for public engagement, for civic engagements, for building stronger civil societies, for being bold to ask question and speak truth to the power. That could be the lesson from here. I wish all the success in your 2 days conference. Thank you very much for inviting me.